I mention Allah in the well-known days. This statement of the Exalted One is the takbir at the jamarat when one does the stoning, and at the end of the 5 daily prayers during the time when one is on Hajj. So secondly, it's referring to also that this takbir, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, walillahi alhamd. This is also done at the end of the 5 salawat. Now, the very towers of knowledge in this area, they differ in the time in which one is to begin the takbir in and when one is to end. Firstly, they say one can start making the takbir from Salat al-Fajr on the day of Arafah up until Salat al-Asr after the days of Tashriq, 13th, 14th, and 15th, as said by Ali, Al-Qadi Abu Yusuf, and Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani, radiyallahu anhum ajma'een. Secondly, it can be from Salat al-Fajr on the day of Arafah on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah to Salat al-Asr on the day of sacrifice up until the 11th of Dhul Hijjah, as said by Ibn Mas'ud and Abu Hanifa, radiyallahu anhuma. Thirdly, it's from after Salat al-Dhuhr on the day of sacrifice until after Asr, the day at the end of the days of Tashriq, the 15th, as said by Ibn Umar, Zayd ibn Thabit, Ibn Abbas, and Ata. One position is someone may make takbir after Dhuhr on the day of sacrifice up until after the day of Dhuhr, after the Salah of Dhuhr on the day of on the day of the 15th. And fifthly, one may make takbir on the day of sacrifice after Dhuhr until after Dhuhr on the days of Tashriq. This was said by Malik ibn Anas, and it's one of the fatwas of Imam al-Shafi'i. Sixthly is one may say the takbir from Salat al-Maghrib on the day of sacrifice to the Salah of Fajr on the days of Tashriq, and that's the 15th. This is the statement of Imam al-Shafi'i. Now, the madhab of our Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal is that the person may, if he chooses, to start the takbir after he has done the Salah of Fajr on the day of Arafah, and the last of it is after Asr at the end of the days of Tashriq. This is if he is in a state of hal, out of ihram. If he is in a state of ihram, he makes takbir from the beginning of his completion of Dhuhr on the day of sacrifice till the end of Asr and the last of the days of Tashriq. Now, someone may ask, does this takbir, Allahu Akbar, all the way to the end, is this takbir to be done in jama'ah or not? Now, there are two statements from Imam Ahmad. One is that this can be done for whoever prayed in jama'ah, singly or individually. This can be stated. This was stated by Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah in one ruling. And secondly, it can be specified that people generally will only do so after the Fard Salah. So if he prayed alone then he still does the takbir even if he's by himself. And this is a statement of Imam al-Shafi'i. Now, the well-known days in which you are to mention Allah with these takbirs are, firstly, the days of Tashriq, which are after the sacrifice from the 12th on. As said by Ibn Umar, Ibn Abbas, Al-Hasan al-Basri, Ata, Mujahid, Qatada, Ibn Da'ima, and others. And secondly, it can also be abbreviated to the day of sacrifice and the 2 days that come after. As said by Ali and Ibn Umar. And thirdly, they are the 10 days that come into Dhul Hijjah, as said by Sa'id ibn Jubayr and Ibrahim al-Nakha'i and Az-Zujaj. So when these days are called ma'adudat, it means that it's done a lot, even though the days may be a little bit. And when the Exalted One has said, and whoever hurries in 2 days, meaning whoever does the stoning and completes their affair in 2 days, in the days of Mina, and comes back, there's no sin upon him. But whoever delays with the second group and stays for a 3rd day from the days of Mina, there's no sin upon him. Now, it may be asked, why would the one who's rushing to come back from Mina after 2 days, why would that person fear sin for himself? And why would the one who's delaying to come back, why would that person have to fear sin for himself? Close quote. Now, there's just a couple of things that need to be mentioned. When you get out to Mina, you will have done the following things when you go out to Mina. This is your final days in Mina. You will have waited in Mina at the tents. And when you have received news from your Za'im, the slaughter has happened. The men shave their heads, the women cut a small finger's worth of hair from their own. They head back to Al-Masjid Al-Haram from Mina. They do the tawaf of ziyarah, the umrah. Then after that, they go back out to Mina, because what's happened is they've gone into a partial hal. They have cut the hair, taken off their ihrams after having showered, put on their street clothes that they would normally have worn, but they still are not to have sexual intercourse with their spouses. Then they head back out to Mina. This is usually at 1 o'clock in the morning. So you'll see Muslim brothers, because the sisters are waiting patiently, with their thumbs out on Ibrahim Khalil Street in Mecca, hitching a ride. And you'll see big South Central Los Angeles retired Bluebird buses, still with bullet holes on the back end, pulling over, grabbing those brothers. They tell them how many, and they say it is 10 Riyal ahead or 20 Riyal ahead, depending on how cheap the driver is, who you're speaking with, and how quick he can get you there, and you all pile in. Now you do this at about 1:30. Sometime around 4 in the morning you get there. But inshallah you've prayed Isha. You get there around 4 in the morning. Some brothers will have already figured out the shortcuts and have beat you back there in our sleep. So you arrive there and you're back in Mina. And you choose to say, Alhamdulillah, I know what I'm going to do now in these ayyamun ma'adudat. I'm going to do the stonings. I know what's required of me. So you're in your street clothes now. You're not completely completed. You're not completely in hal yet. You do the stonings for 2 days. On the 2nd day, after you complete your stoning, you may head back. After 2 days. This is what Allah is saying in the Quran. Surah Al-Baqarah, the second surah, 203. So after 2 days in Mina, this is the 2 days we're talking about. You do the first stoning on day 1. Day 2, Imam Mansur al-Buhuti says, for those that are going back, rahimahullah, they can stone it as early as they can. So you finish Salat al-Fajr. Wait for sunrise. You've got a bit of time on your hands. You feel like walking back to Mecca. You get there. You do your stoning on day 2. You look for the signs on the freeway. Mina South, Masjid al-Haram. There it is. And you start walking with the crowds and crowds of people. By the second day, you've completed all of your rites. Now you are going to do your final tawaf once you arrive back in Mecca. And so I stood with thousands of slaves of Allah on the steps going through Bab Bani Shayba, which is conveniently now named Bab Malik Abdul Aziz. On the steps, having come in from the gate of Bab Bani Shayba, we're standing on the steps looking at the sacred curtains of the Kaaba. Our last time, having drank the Zamzam water, looking at the curtains of the Kaaba after our final tawaf, our goodbye tawaf. And you're standing there looking at the people going around, and then you leave the masjid, having parted ways with the Kaaba, looking back, not turning your back on the Kaaba, going up the steps and looking back until that's the last thing you saw when you went out of the masjid. You then pile back on the bus, you prepare to go, you receive a phone call. Some of the slaves of Allah were on the way back to Mecca, but got caught at the stoning during Maghrib time. It's fard for them to stay there now. They have to do the 3rd day. So whoever hastens, do not get caught there at Maghrib, because it will be fard for you to stay and complete a 3rd day. So whoever hastens, there's no sin upon him, for whoever has taqwa, and whoever delays. So that's the person that will stay in Mina for the full 3 days. You will find that many a za'im from England will be rushing you to try to make sure that you're there for the 2 days. You must get back, you must get back, you must get back. Because a slave of Allah can get left while we're making the 8-hour journey to Medina from Mecca. Now the position of Ahmed, this is the mu'tamid position of Ahmed and his school, that this is what you do. Because if you have some need, and he says, for example, like the shepherds, orphans, people like this, if you have some need, then you may hasten in those 2 days. Now, I'm not sure what the position of Hanafi scholars is on this, although I've seen that they have allowed some levity in this issue because of what can happen with the scheduling times between getting you back to Mecca, to Medina, and then doing all the other planning. I'm not sure what their exact fatwa is, but they have taken that ruling from Imam Ahmed because of logistical purposes and reasonings. So, let's say you went by yourself. So you're not worried about a za'im or anyone else. You had your own setup required. If you do the stoning on the 2 days, you must make sure that you have left that area and are already well on your way to Al-Masjid Al-Haram before the Maghrib Adhan comes. If you are caught there for the Maghrib Adhan or at the time, if you see, because most times you can see the sun and it sets quickly, you'll be looking at it and it looks like it's running towards the horizon. You will just see the sun just run below the horizon and you'll say, well, alhamdulillah, we have a 3rd day of stoning. Because the sun will not let you go. It will just say, okay, that's it for you now. All day it's been up high, moving slowly towards the horizon. And then it gets to this point after Asr, about an hour after Asr, where it just races with you and says, let's see who can finish first. And it just goes below the horizon and you say, alhamdulillah, I'm glad I bought an extra pair of stones. And then you do your stoning. So whoever hastens, there's no sin upon them. And whoever delays, there's no sin upon them. Okay? So that's the point that you want to keep in mind. So now, what we've completed in this particular juncture is all the ahkam of the book of Hajj in a general sense. So inshallah, from these ayat and we're going to be moving on to the next set. From these ayat, hopefully, inshallah, you should have a better understanding of how the Hajj works from the time your plane touches down all the way up until the end of your journey to head to Medina. You should say, Alhamdulillah, I understand what's expected of me. I know where the main sites are. I know what I must do. The other areas of fiqh will have to be filled in with the other ahadith and so forth, but you should have a better idea to where you can say, Walhamdulillah, I understand what's meant for me to do.